I was drained, physically, mentally, completely exhausted from taking care of my baby. And right when I needed him the most, Kyle decided this was the perfect time to walk out on me. I'm at my breaking point, Kyle. I can't keep doing this alone. I pleaded, rocking our daughter, Lily, who had been crying every night. Well, isn't it the mother's job to take care of the kids? I can do whatever I want. He scoffed, throwing his suitcase over his shoulder. I stared at him, stunned. Was he serious? He smirked. I'll have fun without you. And just like that, he laughed, turned around, and walked out the door. I wanted to chase after him, to scream, to make him understand just how much I was struggling. But the sound of Lily wailing from the other room stopped me in my tracks. The weight of it all crushed me, and I broke down crying right there. How did it come to this? I hadn't spent years working my way up in my company just to financially support a lazy, freeloading husband. I thought marriage was about teamwork, about lifting each other up. But Kyle had no intention of carrying his share of the weight. And to make matters worse, he had been using my credit card like it was his personal allowance. I wiped my tears and forced myself to take a deep breath. Enough was enough. If Kyle thought he could walk all over me, he had another thing coming. My name is Rachel. I'm 34 years old, and I've been grinding at a major corporation ever since I graduated. That's where I met Kyle. Well, not at work, but at a bar I used to hit after long, exhausting days. He was working there as a bartender. Kyle is 6 years younger than me, 28 now. He was charming, easy to talk to, always willing to listen to me vent about work. Before I knew it, I was stopping by the bar just to see him. Eventually, we started dating. My parents weren't thrilled. They kept pushing me to marry someone from my company, someone who had real career ambitions. But I didn't care. Kyle was sweet, considerate, and always knew how to make me laugh. Right after we got married, he even helped out with housework. Since he worked evenings, he took care of cleaning and laundry during the day. I know you're busy, so I'll cook dinner tonight, he'd say, greeting me with a home-cooked meal after I got home from work. I felt lucky. I felt like I had married the right man. But 6 months in, everything changed. It all started with a paycheck stub. One day, Kyle happened to see it lying on the table. Whoa, Rachel, you really make this much? He stared at it, his brows raised in disbelief. I had never told him exactly how much I earned. I knew you made good money, but I didn't think it was this much, he muttered, lacing his fingers behind his head. I bust my ass at the bar and barely make anything compared to this. I should have realized then that something had shifted. A few weeks later, he dropped a bombshell on me. I quit my job. I blinked. What? I mean, your salary is more than enough for both of us, right? I figured I'd just focus on taking care of the house while you keep working. I felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. He didn't even ask me before making a decision like that. I opened my mouth to argue, but then I remembered. I had just taken a pregnancy test earlier that day, and it was positive. I had planned to tell him that night. Actually, I'm pregnant. Kyle's eyes widened. Wait, really? I nodded. Yeah, I found out today. For a moment, I thought he'd be excited. But instead, the first thing he asked was, but your company gives maternity benefits, right? Yeah, they do, I said, suddenly uneasy. Even after hearing about the pregnancy, Kyle didn't seem all that happy. Instead of discussing the future, he kept pressing about how much money I'd be getting during maternity leave. I'll take care of the baby, he reassured me. You just focus on bringing home the paycheck. At the time, I wanted to believe he meant well, but something about the way he said it made me uncomfortable. I tried to push those doubts aside. When the hospital confirmed my pregnancy, I threw myself into work, grinding through morning sickness and fatigue, determined to make sure we'd be financially secure. Meanwhile, Kyle had fully embraced the house husband role, or at least, that's what I thought. At first, things seemed fine, but little by little, he stopped doing anything around the house. I'd come home after a long day, and the place would be a disaster. Dirty dishes piled up, laundry untouched. "Hey, Kyle, what's for dinner?" I asked one night, exhausted and starving. Lying on the couch, eyes glued to his phone, he barely glanced at me. "Oh, I already ate at the diner down the street. There's frozen food in the fridge if you're hungry." I was too tired to even argue. Then, my maternity leave started, and things got worse. Now that I was home all day, he used that as an excuse to do even less. "If you're home too, why should I be the only one doing chores?" he snapped when I asked him to help. But while our marriage was crumbling, at least my pregnancy was progressing smoothly. Eventually, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl, Lily. After the birth, my mom came to help out, and my older sister, Melissa, started visiting more often. Melissa is a housewife, married to a guy named Jake. They don't have kids, so she had a lot of free time to visit. "Congrats on the baby, Rachel," she beamed, bringing over gifts for Lily. Kyle, meanwhile, barely acknowledged me. Instead, his eyes lit up every time Melissa walked through the door. "It's so hot today," Melissa sighed one afternoon, fanning herself. Kyle practically sprinted to the fridge. "Here, have some juice," he said, handing her a cold glass. Melissa laughed. "Wow, Kyle, you're so thoughtful. I wish Jake was this considerate." Kyle stood there with a shy smile, clearly pleased with himself. At first, I brushed it off, but every time Melissa visited, he gravitated toward her. He ignored me completely, hanging on her every word. Months passed, and Lily's night crying got worse. I was beyond sleep deprived, barely functioning. "And Kyle?" He snapped over every little thing. "God, can't you shut her up? I'm going insane being stuck in this house all the time," he yelled. That was it. "If you hate being at home so much, why don't you get a job?" I snapped back. "You don't clean, you don't cook, and you don't help with Lily. What exactly do you do, Kyle?" He glared at me. "We can live just fine on your maternity benefits, so why should I bother working?" At that moment, I realized the truth. Kyle had no intention of ever working again. He was a leech. "We have a child, Kyle. We need more money, not less. A father should at least contribute, either financially or by helping out at home." He stormed toward the front door. "Where are you going?" I demanded. "Melissa's place," he muttered, slipping on his shoes. I felt sick. Why was he running to her after fighting with me? That night, he texted me, "I'm staying at Melissa's tonight." When I called her, she laughed it off. "Don't worry, Rachel. All couples fight sometimes." The next morning, Kyle returned. But instead of apologizing, he was packing. "Where are you going?" I asked. "Oh, Melissa and I are going on a trip," he said casually. My stomach dropped. "A trip?" "Yeah, to Canada. Jake's coming too, so don't worry." My head spun. "And how are you paying for this?" Then it hit me. I checked my wallet. My credit card was gone. "You've got to be kidding me. Wait a minute. They're taking me to some kind of interrogation room at the airport." Kyle's frantic voice echoed through the phone as I smirked to myself. "They're grabbing my arm and escorting me. Rachel, do something." He was kind enough to give me a play-by-play report of his humiliating situation. "Well, when someone uses a credit card that isn't theirs, fraud detection kicks in. This is just standard procedure. I replied, barely suppressing my laughter. Rachel, this isn't funny. If this keeps up, I won't even be able to board my flight back home. Kyle whined. I could hear him in the background arguing with airport security as they checked through his belongings. Apparently, he wasn't the only one in trouble. Melissa and Jake were also being held for questioning in separate rooms. That was when I found out Kyle hadn't just used my money for himself. He had paid for all of Melissa and Jake's travel expenses too. I was stunned. I knew he was a leech, but I didn't think he'd be shameless enough to bankroll everyone's vacation using my card. Then, my phone rang again. It was Melissa. Rachel, thanks to you, we're being detained at the Canadian airport, she snapped. I arched a brow. Melissa, I had no idea Kyle was paying for your trip with my card. That's on him. Oh, come on, she scoffed. Kyle came to us saying he was completely stressed out and needed help. Jake and I had no choice but to tag along to cheer him up. So isn't it only fair that you, his wife, cover the cost? I was speechless. Melissa had always been self-absorbed, but this was next-level entitlement. Oh, and by the way, she continued, her voice laced with venom, you're just a plain, boring workaholic, and yet you had the nerve to have a baby before me. Don't act all high and mighty just because you're a mother now. So stop being difficult and turn the card back on right now. There it was. Melissa had always been pampered, always praised for being the beautiful one, while I was the one who worked hard. It seemed like she wasn't thrilled about the fact that I had reached a milestone in life before she did. Before I could respond, I heard Jake's voice take over the call. Rachel, this is Jake. I just found out something, and I need to tell you right now. Something in his tone made my stomach drop. What is it? I asked. Jake sighed heavily. Melissa lied to me. She told me that you were begging us to take Kyle on this trip, and that you offered to pay for everything. I was floored. She said, what? I didn't know Kyle was freeloading off your card, Jake admitted. Honestly, I'm done with this. I'm buying my own plane ticket and flying back alone. In the background, I heard Melissa explode. What do you mean you're going back alone? Jake's voice was firm. I have my own credit card. I can afford my own ticket. Wait, hold on. Buy our tickets too. Melissa screeched. Kyle, and I can't get home without you. Kyle jumped in, practically begging. Jake, please man, don't leave us stranded. Just buy the tickets and we'll pay you back. But Jake wasn't having it. No, I refuse. For a moment, I was confused. Why was Jake this mad? Sure, Kyle and Melissa had used my card, but why was he completely cutting them off? Then he took a deep breath and said something that shattered everything. Rachel, listen carefully. Kyle and Melissa are having an affair. I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. What? I whispered. Yeah. I had my suspicions for a while. One day, I came home from work, and our entire bedroom reeked of Kyle's cologne. It was all over the place, even the sheets. I clutched my phone, my body going numb. I didn't have solid proof. Jake continued. So when Melissa and Kyle invited me on this trip, I thought, this is my chance. If I went with them, I could catch them in the act. I felt sick. I had noticed Kyle's obsession with Melissa. The way he fawned over her, hovered around her, practically worshipped her. But I had told myself it was just harmless admiration. I had been so wrong. On the first night, around 3 in the morning, Melissa got up, left our room, and went straight into Kyle's. Jake said darkly. I saw it with my own eyes. No, that's not. Melissa stammered in the background. Jake, you were snoring. You were fast asleep. Jake let out a cold chuckle. I was pretending to sleep. I knew if I faked it, you'd sneak out. Melissa's voice trembled. Wait, so the second night, yep. I was awake then too. Jake cut in. You thought you got away with it because you weren't caught the first night? Do you really think I'm that stupid? I covered my mouth with my hand, trying to process it all. Melissa and Kyle. Melissa, my own sister. And Kyle, the man I had married. I felt nauseated. Jake turned his attention back to me. Rachel, I'm done with both of them. I'm leaving them here. Is that okay with you? I swallowed hard. Then, slowly, I smiled. Jake, do it. Let them figure it out for themselves. Jake chuckled. Got it. I lifted my phone back to my ear. Melissa, Kyle, you two can stay in Canada. Don't ever come back. Melissa shrieked. Wait, Rachel, you can't be serious. Just send us money for the plane tickets. Kyle was already groveling. Rachel, please, just send us one more payment. I let out a cold laugh. Kyle, weren't you a bartender? Try getting hired at the airport bar. And Melissa, you're great at flirting with men. Maybe you can find a rich guy to sponsor your flight back. Then I hung up. Jake returned home safely. Meanwhile, I got to work on my final move. Kyle and Melissa ended up begging their parents for plane tickets and managed to fly back a few days later. The moment Kyle landed, he called me. Rachel, what the hell is going on? I just got home and I can't get into the apartment. The locks don't work. And why is there a vacancy sign on the door? I smirked. Oh, I forgot to tell you. I canceled the lease. Kyle was stunned. You what? The apartment was in my name. I can do whatever I want with it. But what about my stuff? Oh, I got rid of everything, I said casually. Not that you had anything valuable. Kyle's voice was desperate now. Wait, Rachel, where are you? We need to talk. I'm not telling you. I moved. Lily and I are starting fresh. Please, at least let me have my credit card back. I laughed. Kyle, that card's been canceled for days. There's no point in you getting it back. His voice cracked. Wait, you planned this. You let me rack up the charges so you could use it against me in the divorce. Ding, ding, ding. I said mockingly. Rachel, I don't want a divorce. I hung up. As for Melissa, she called Jake, begging to be taken back. I was forced. Kyle pressured me. You're the only one I love, she sobbed. Jake's voice was ice cold. Melissa, I don't even want to look at you. Then he blocked her. And just like that, Kyle and Melissa, once so smug, so full of themselves, were homeless, broke, and alone. And me? I was finally free.